and just ask how the session went. And hi guys, like if you're there, and would you mind just share a few things, give a brief recap of what happened last night, and then things you find useful, not useful. Give a quick update. Okay, maybe we're feeling shy. That's okay. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying the session, and today we actually are quite lucky. We have Dr. Lee Swanson. He is a faculty member from Edwards School of Business, and great resources on entrepreneurship. He spent his career in doing entrepreneurial research, building entrepreneur community, and supporting students going through different entrepreneurship ventures. And Lee was also my entrepreneurship teacher when I did my MBA, and I learned lots from him. So today he's actually going to tell us more about business modeling. Yesterday we talked about how once you have product, it's not enough. So Lee will actually tell us what else you need to consider in order to be successful. So without further ado, I give you Lee Swanson. Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tate, and thank you so much to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor. I really looking forward to hopefully spurring a little bit of discussion today, and really looking forward to talking to you today about business models. So, Tate, if I can, what I'll do is I'll share the screen here. Looks like I can do that. So I'll fire that up, and hopefully you're able to see the screen over here. Just bear with me just for a second as I have the newer version of WebEx here, so I know I need to click on a couple of things to get the chat and so on showing up here. So please feel free to unmute your microphones if ever you have any comments or questions or thoughts, and I'm looking forward to answering any questions you might have, and also learning from you too. If you have some insights from your experiences related to business models, I'm everybody be I'm sure happy to hear that. I've opened up the chat and I have it on the excuse me, on the screen. So if you'd prefer to chat and write something in the chat, a question, that's fine as well. So anyway, just unmute yourself and throw out a question at any time, or use the chat, and we'll take it from here. So it's my pleasure to talk to you about business models today. What I thought I would do is follow a bit of a pattern kind of like this, where maybe we could talk a bit about what a business model is and provide that perspective. I thought if we're talking business models, it's probably appropriate to talk a little bit about kind of almost two ways to get a business up and running with the lean startup approach, or with using business planning to get all of the ideas about the business in place in business plan format, so that if you need financing, or if it's a very complex type of business that you want to start, you probably want to go the route of building a business plan first. But if you're able to get a business going, maybe a tech type of business, without a business plan because you don't need financing, for instance, then a business model is relevant in either of those two directions. So I thought maybe could talk about that a little bit. The probably most widely used business modeling tool, at least that I'm aware of, is the business model canvas. So I'll show you some of the pieces of that. It is a fairly simple tool. It covers 9 particular areas that together comprise what we can call a business model, and it provides a useful way to figure out just what the structure of your business is going to look like before you move forward with creating the business, or before you move forward with doing some further business planning about the business if you're looking to raise money to start the business. I thought I would just finish with not much about another business model concept, but just to alert you to the fact that there are different concepts of business models, and the business model canvas is just one of those ideas. So kind of the first question that I think people have is, what exactly is a business model, and what does that term kind of mean? Excuse me. So I'll give you a couple of different perspectives on it. And it's not, when you see the definitions that are out there about business models, they're pretty wishy-washy. These definitions of business models are not that precise or that clear-cut. So I think that's a good indication that the idea of a business model is kind of an idea that's dependent upon the situation. It's kind of an idea that works in different situations differently, but overall, excuse me, overall, the idea of a business model is that it kind of sets you up to be able to develop your business. Osterwalder, who is the developer of the business model canvas idea, we'll talk about a little later, and that you can see in the bottom right hand of the screen, and I'll blow that up and show you a bigger copy of that later. But Osterwalder believed that a business model was a set of assumptions or hypotheses. So, as I mentioned, that's kind of a wishy-washy way to describe something. It feels pretty broad. But when we begin to talk about business models and think about them, I think it'll kind of make sense where he was coming from. Another researcher describes a business model a bit more concisely. So Chatterjee described a business model as a configuration, or activities, in other words, of what a business does and what it invests in based upon what drives the business towards making a profit. So maybe a little bit more precise of a definition, but still kind of wishy-washy a little bit. And moving on to Margreta, this again is a bit of an overview of a business model without really defining exactly what it looks like. And this person said that a business model is really the story that explains how a business works. And I actually kind of like this one because it to me describes really what a business model is intended to do. It's intended to put a structure together that describes to you and makes sense to you what your business is going to look like going forwards. My perspective on a business model is, I think of it as kind of the framework around which a business is built. So I like the analogy of framing of a house, for instance, or a building of some sort. And I think of the business model as kind of the frame of the house, like you see on the screen here, where once that frame is together, you have the kind of the general look of the house, you have kind of the structure of the house, you have how many rooms are going to fit into it generally, you have the kind of framework in place so that you can then move forward with the more detailed work. You can put the siding on, the windows in, you can put the shingles on the roof, and you can do a whole bunch of interior decorating if you like, and you can then get to all the details that make the business the business. But the overall framework is necessary before you can do that. So that's kind of why I like the idea of thinking of the business model as a framework around which a business is constructed. I also like to sometimes refer to business models as an alternative way to seek to improve profitability. This is less to do with startups and more to do with businesses that already exist. And what I mean by using a business model as a way to consider how you can improve profits by taking and reconsidering how you do things and how the structure of the business works, that is often a better way to improve profits than just by simply trying to make more sales of the product that you're currently producing. So to back that up a little bit, I'd like to refer to a little bit of research here. Amit and Zott in 2012 said that according to their global survey or including, according to the global survey that they were citing, of 4,000 senior managers by the Economist Intelligence Unit, they found that the majority of those favored looking at business models and tweaking and changing and adjusting a current business model to make it into a slightly different business model, or maybe a dramatically different business model for that sake. The majority of these people in the survey believed that changing the business model was a better way to remain competitive and to improve profits than just taking what the business currently does and doing more of it. Or in this case, maybe even adding more products or adding more services, which is often what we might normally think of. If you're running a business and you want to have more profits, well, maybe you should try and sell more of what your product or your service is. These people in this survey learned that the majority of senior managers believed that changing your business model was a better way to improve profits. An IBM study, 750 business leaders, found that the growth in operating margins was faster over the previous 5 years when they emphasized business model innovation as compared to just changing their basic product mix, for instance. So once again, a bit more of this idea that instead of that, the lens that you look through can help you improve your business. And if you look through the lens that considers your business in a business model frame, that's maybe a good way to improve profitability, to keep your business fresh going forward into the future. This is it's almost like a model that I kind of use in my classes to describe the two different approaches that can be built upon a business model. So here, and I can give more detail about what I mean by the different types of research, but just to describe this flow really briefly, what I like to think of when students in my classes are thinking about developing businesses, I like to talk to them about first coming up with a business concept. Once you've come up with a business concept, you should do a little bit of research to figure out that this business concept is in fact something that's needed in the market. I also think that when they come up with a business concept, they should also think about some basic foundational kind of research to determine whether the market's big enough, for instance, or to figure out what the overall cost might be to get the business up and going, just in fairly quick terms. And once they do these kinds of research and think through this whole business idea, if they can then construct an actual business model using perhaps the business model canvas, what that can give them the opportunity to then do is, backing this up with a bit of research as you're going along, you can then take one of two approaches. One approach is to go into the mode of developing a full business plan. Another approach using the business model as a foundation is to go and actually start your business using the lean startup approach. I'd like to talk about both of these really briefly, but first the lean startup approach, because the whole concept of the business model is something that kind of originated by the people that developed the idea that a business that starts sometimes should just be started by putting it out there and starting the business and making adjustments on the fly and actually using the start of the business as almost the market research to figure out how it should look and how it should be constructed and how basically its business model should evolve. So Blank and Dorf are authors of a book called The Lean Startup. And I normally have that in my office, so I usually show it when I talk about this book. But it's a book that's a fairly easy read, and it gives a really good perspective on their thoughts about business startups. Blankendorf and Osterwalder and some of the other researchers in this area believe that if you start up a business and it remains in the category of being a startup 3 or 4 or 5 years down the way, it's actually a failed startup, because the purpose of a startup business is to move it beyond being a startup business and move it into the realm of being an ongoing viable business that's set for moving into the future. So what's the difference then? A startup is an early stage business that usually the entrepreneur is struggling to keep it surviving. The entrepreneur is working themselves hard in the business, and the business has not grown to the size yet where its revenues can sustain it having perhaps a marketing department and a human resources department and so on. The business is not to that stage yet. The business is to the stage where the entrepreneur is bootstrapping, which means financing it on using their own methods and their own resources. They're working hard in the business. They're learning about how the business should function because they're going to make some mistakes and they have to correct those mistakes and move forward in that way. So the idea that a startup should just be a temporary stage that a business is in actually makes a lot of sense. Because if a startup remains a startup for too long, it's really just a failed startup and the entrepreneur's not taken the steps necessary to turn it into an ongoing, longer-term viable business. Well, the idea of a business model fits this notion because if you can come up with a business model and build your startup using this business model approach, then you're moving your business towards that state potentially of being an ongoing business and getting out of the category of being a startup. According to the lean startup idea, how you do it is you, for instance, in the case of I'll use Skip the Dishes as one example. Josh and Chris Sumer were they're actually my class in 2009, actually, and that's before they started Skip the Dishes. And they actually built a business plan in my class, but it wasn't for Skip the Dishes. The business plan they built was for another type of company. And there's a good reason for that, because a company like Skip the Dishes does not necessarily need a business plan. And in the case of how Skip the Dishes actually started right here in Saskatoon, it didn't need a business plan. They didn't use one right at the start. The way that Skip the Dishes started was the owners got together and they got some people who could do some programming, and they built this whole idea through looking and basically building a business model. They thought about this business model. They realized that they have to get some restaurants on board. They have to get some delivery people on board as almost independent contractors. They have to get some sort of a technology in the middle to allow customers, almost like a third party, to place an order from a restaurant for food. The restaurant would have to acknowledge that and fulfill the order. A driver would have to come pick up the food and drop it off at my house. And the app in the middle would have to facilitate how the payment was made. In the case of Skip the Dishes, they didn't write a business plan, but they did develop a business model. As they developed it, they sometimes pivoted, which means that they thought that they could just hire delivery people on a full-time basis and have them deliver food. And then they realized that they should pivot and think of the delivery people more like almost like Uber drivers, where they're just there and available on demand when there's deliveries to be done. So they built the business model, and as they built the business model, they decided at one point that they had what was called a minimum viable product. In other words, they had enough restaurants signed up, they had enough delivery people arranged, and they had an app that worked in the middle, and it was ready to be launched. So they launched what was called a minimum viable product, and 24 hours a day, basically, or whenever that product was working and people were making orders on it, literally during the time that it was functioning, they were on standby. So if I ordered something and it didn't work out for me, and as a customer, I let them know something wasn't working, or if I ordered something, it worked good, fine for me, but the delivery person found a problem with it, they would let the company know. Or if the restaurant who got the order, something didn't work out in how the product was and how the system ran, well, what would happen was that the company would know right away, and their programmers would work right away and solve that problem so that even later that night, when somebody else ordered, the same problem wouldn't arise again. So they took the minimum viable product and continually improved it based upon the experiences of running the business. Sometimes they had to pivot to make fairly major changes. So that's how the lean startup approached. It's more probably appropriate for technology-based types of companies or companies that don't require a great big facility or a bunch of machinery, because then you need a business plan normally to get your loan or to acquire investors. So lean startup companies are ideal for like app development and for these kinds of companies. So back to this chart again, that describes this approach. The other approach, where the business model leads into being able to develop a business plan. Once the business model is developed, then a business plan can be written with operations plan, human resources plan, marketing plan, financial plan, vision, mission, values, all of these kind of things up front. And once that business plan is developed, it'll be improved to make it more and more realistic in the next draft. And the next drafts, it'll be made so that it's realistic, but it also will be appealing to investors. And as they continue to develop the business plan, they develop a business structure that is also appealing to the entrepreneur, because it has to be realistic, it has to appeal to the target investors, and it has to appeal to the entrepreneurs. No use me starting a business if I can't make a living from it, for instance. All the while, the business model might be revisited. So when you develop the first idea of the business, maybe it can't be made realistic because the business model is not structured right. So then the owner would go back and rejig the business model, maybe even go all the way back and change to a different business concept, do more research. And in other words, the business model is something that can change over time. I'll leave these slides with Tate, and I'll just slide through these really quickly, but they're, according to some researchers, this Amit and Zott, who I cited a bit earlier, when you're thinking about business models, there are some kind of questions you can ask yourself to figure out how they should be structured. One of them has to do with the content and how innovation occurs in the business model. Another one is about the structure of the innovation. So how the activities link to each other in novel ways. So I won't go into these 6 questions in detail, but there are 3 of them. Here are 2 others. And then the 6th one is here. So I know I went through them pretty quickly, but I'll leave these slides back. Generally, a business model, and what I'm really itching to show you here is, oops, I seem to have these going backwards. Here we go, forwards. A business model canvas is the easiest way to think about the structure of a business model. So here are a couple of links that you can use if you like. The Business Model Generation book, you can see about half of that online for free. Business Model Canvas, if you click that, it'll show you the actual business model. Now, the Business Model Canvas has 9 parts to it. It's meant to help determine the structure of a business. It's actually meant to be printed out on a great big sheet of paper that you stick to the wall, and then you add sticky notes that describe, for instance, who the key partners are. And as you pivot and change, you put new sticky notes over the old sticky notes, because maybe the original key partners that you thought were essential for your business, maybe some of them aren't anymore and they're better ones. So you can put sticky notes over sticky notes. And in the end, you'll end up with kind of a layer of sticky notes on this poster that describes your business model. The 9 pieces to the business model include these. One is, who are the key partners for this business? I'll let you read kind of the details of this later if you like, but who are the key partners, including suppliers, including potentially business partners, and what activities do these suppliers and business partners and other partners, how do they interact with your business, and what does your business do with them? What activities do they perform? The key partners is one chunk of the business model canvas up here in this position. Another component of a business model, and this is kind of the middle component, is the value proposition. To me, it's not a it's not a surprise that they position the value proposition right in the middle of the business model canvas. The value proposition describes what it is that the business does that adds value to the customers, that the customers are willing to pay for the product or service. So the value proposition is meant to be where you define really clearly what value you're providing so that people are willing to pay you for what you do. If you can't define that, it's really tough to really communicate to your potential customers what you can do to solve the problem. It's probably even difficult to identify who your customers are. So the value proposition is a really important piece. Another piece of the business model canvas are customer segments. You have to know who your customers are, because if you don't, you're going to be wasting a whole lot of money trying to sell to people who aren't going to buy it. You have to know who your customer segments are so that you can design a product that or service that suits their needs. Customer segments include segmentation based on geography. City of Saskatoon plus 50 kilometers outside. Maybe that's a geographic segmentation. Maybe your target customers fit within that geographic segmentation, but also your target customers might be based on a demographic segmentation. Like, for instance, maybe they reside, your target customers, within Saskatoon or within 50 kilometers of the city. Maybe you believe they're between the ages of 35 and 65, and they're typically females for your type of business. So that's geographic and demographic segmentation kind of combined to begin to describe who your customer is. Other segment methods include psychographic segmentation. Maybe it's those females that are between those ages within that geographic territory who who love the outdoors and like outdoor adventures. That's how they think. There are other segmentation methods as well, but you need to be able to define who your customer segments are as a critical part of building your business model. Up in this upper corner, the business model includes the key activities, like what do you do? Do you manufacture something? Do you go through do you manage information, or all of these things that you do that describe what your business is would be described in that category. This square here, the key resources that are required to run the business in terms of buildings and people and what key resources are needed. This square up here talks about the nature of the relationships that you intend to build with the customers. How do you manage that? How do you keep your customers happy and keep linked in with them? This square here are the channels of distribution for your company. So how are you going to get the product to your customers? Are they going to come into the store that you run? Or are you going to have an online presence and an online catalog and they can order things and you can send it to them? Or are you going to go to their house to deliver the plumbing services that your business is going to offer? So determining your channels of distribution is another key part of the business model. The bottom two items are kind of almost at the foundation, and the first one is the cost structure. So what is going to cost the most money and what's going to cost the money in order to make this business function and operate? On the other side is, of course, your revenue streams. Where are you going to get the money to keep your business functioning and operating? So the business model canvas takes those 9 elements, and if you can get answers to each of those 9 elements, you'll end up with really a good description of what the structure of your business looks like. It's kind of like that frame that I showed earlier of a house. The more detailed items, the more detailed plans that you make are kind of how you finish it off and make your business a viable and sustainable one. To kind of finish this off, I thought I would also describe, or really briefly show you that there are different concepts of business models and different ways to present them. The business model canvas is, I think, the one that's most widely used. The business model canvas is actually a fairly easy conceptualization of how a business can be structured using those 9 categories. And a business model canvas is quite easy to use. Another one is called the growth wheel. And the growth wheel is far more complex. The growth wheel is made up of these pieces of pie, in a way, that fit under the categories of customer relations, business concept, organization of the business, and the operations. And under, for instance, the customer relations, there's one called branding. And in here, there are, supporting this area, there are probably 4 or 5 or 6 worksheets that the growth wheel uses. So it's you have to pay to use this one, and there are online systems. It's made up of a whole bunch of worksheets that you can fill in that help you define your business model. And those worksheets fall into those 4 categories. So I wanted to just point out that there is different ways to think about business modeling. You can think of it this way, or you can think of it using something like the business model canvas. So I guess I did way more talking here than listening. So I hope that was kind of a useful idea or useful approach to thinking about what a business model is. And I don't know if there's a couple more minutes left. I'm absolutely glad and happy to answer any questions you might have about how people use business models, or what they're like, or why they're structured the way they are. So if you just feel free to turn on your microphone and blurt out a question if you like, or if you have a question that you'd like to jot in the chat, please let me know. And if there aren't any questions, I hope, Tate, that was what you're kind of hoping for a description of business models.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. That was really good. I think gave our students a really good starting point. I think to me, the business model was a game changer, because then you're starting to have a framework to actually do the systematic design of what your business should be, and what you need to do actually get everything to in order. And in many ways, it helps a startup to know how you can become a grown-up, like an actual business. So it was really beneficial for me personally in that way. Is there any questions in the audience for Lee right now? If not, you can always reach out to Lee like afterwards as well.
Yeah, Tate has my contact information. I'm absolutely glad if anybody wants to reach out to respond to any questions. Something that you mentioned, Tate, a moment ago about this being a game changer. For me, that makes a lot of sense, because for me, I taught business planning for many, many years. And I just approached my teaching of business planning in a way that worked enough. And then the whole concept of business model came along a few years back. And that was like an epiphany to me, because when students could, and people in industry and people I was working with and consulting or whatever, whenever they were building a business plan, it became so clear to me that it was so much easier to have a business model that they thought out first. And that just led into being able to put the siding and the roofing around it to create a business plan if they needed one.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Lee. I think due to the time constraint, I might just move on to my session. And yeah, thank you for presenting. And I really too bad we cannot be in the same room. But this is my small thank you card.
Thank you. Thanks. I'm glad to help anytime. So thanks so much for the chance to chat with you.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Lee. Then yeah. Okay. I'll start sharing some content here. All right. Can you hear me okay, and then see the slides okay? Just quick interview. Some of you may want to unmute yourself and shout out who feel more confident after the session yesterday thinking my business is on the right track? Okay, who thinks I'm less confident because I might need to do some more work? Okay, didn't get anything. Are we being indifferent in that way? Okay, I know we're pushing a lot of information to you this week, and some of you may realize you may not haven't thought through every single aspect of the business, and that's okay. Many startups, even after they've gone through actual incubator program, may not be more ready than you. We've been pushing you pretty hard this week to think about in terms of product development. And then now we'll give you some information in terms of the financial side. All of this, if you are feeling uncertain in some ways, you are actually on the right track, because that way you will be more careful and think through. You're more likely to make a good decision, and that's really what we want you to do. As a startup stage, you're very much like doing sketch when you're doing a grid painting. So now you're sketching with very thick brushes. As you do more, it will become clear. A lot of information may not even become clear until the rubber actually hits the ground. So don't be discouraged. I don't want you to go into what I call analysis paralysis. So then, like you are so engaged into research and think like I'm not ready. That's not our goal. Our goal is to create awareness so you know the right steps to go and help yourself and accomplish that. So today we'll talk about making money. Lee gave us a really good start point to actually summarize how we actually systematically design business. It's very much like your engineering design. That process is helpful. And he also showed a few different ways, lean startup method, business modeling. A couple of years ago was across the chasm. There are different trends, but what you see is oftentimes people say, oh, this is the best tool you can use. If you read Lean Startup, you'll be successful. If you read business modeling, you'll be successful. There's never been one tool that's guaranteed you success. And that's what we were trying to expose you here in different term tools cover all the areas. And none of those tools are really brand new. They're repackaging. You probably notice a lot of similarities with your engineering design and scientific method. So today, I want to briefly talk about how you make money, and then I'll talk about the pitch competition, what that will look like, how you can prepare yourself. I do hope to see many of you and hear about your business idea, and then so we can actually use this workshop and use the pitch as a start point, not the end point, the start point. You can actually move on, and then we will help you to go to different resources, mentorship, and incubator, so you can actually move on to next stage. All right, enough intro. So yesterday we talked about customer and how to create value. A lot of that is really what you do in engineering design, but we take into some business consideration. Typically in engineering firm, that's done by accounting and marketing departments. But if you're an entrepreneur, it's your job. Now we want to talk about something a lot of engineers think is a dirty work, sales. But it's actually really important. What's the single most important requirement to have a business? The customer, a paying customer. Without a paying customer, you're not a business. So yesterday we already got into this. Your customers are more complicated than the people who are just using your product. They may be the same person if you're lucky. If you're not lucky, they may be multiple people and organizations. So you have to be able to navigate that. And so think about who are who are paying for that, who are using it, who loves that, who have the authority to veto your project. I'm not going to go through a lot of that. This is similar concept. I want to focus on sales a bit more. This is where we're not too good at. This is one of my experience is coming from the automation industry. Think about who are the economic buyers, who are the champions and influencers of veto powers, right? So for us, we were building an automation assembling line that actually would replace 900 manual workers, and the customer is packaging company. They need to actually reduce the labor cost and then use this. Who are the champions? Well, the actual human rights and labor movements are quite a big champion. Before, a lot of those workers actually sit their food boxes for 8 hours, 12 hours a day, like just same motion. And the company's accounting department, HR department is the champion. And due to human error, they also have a lot of losses. So the production manager is like the idea of automation. Who has veto power? Well, turned out we found out the regulatory body in the provincial board does have veto power because of the purchasing process. And then we found out that too late. And then we front-loaded a lot of R&D for our second iteration. The users actually have multiple ones. It's actually the workers we're trying to replace. And we'll keep some of them like operating the machine. So in that case, we actually need to understand how they behave, how they are already working, and how we can incorporate that into their design, right? So this is what their buying process will look like. They will actually need to recognize they need the products. Largely, what was the cue for them to realize the need? Because they realized the labor cost was going up. And then for your industry, that might be different. And they need to research options like how you buy a laptop, compare different options. Ben mentioned about this yesterday. And if you have competition, you need to clearly articulate why you're different, why you're better. If you don't have competition, you're trying to compare to the existing solutions. So how they're doing that, get by now. They might purchase your product, install, and then they have to be able to receive value and also have a clear way to determine their purchase was worth it, right? Think about even for you, any purchase you did after using the product, you either love it or you're indifferent or you hate it. And then you need to make a decision to whether you pay it or you refund it and get money back to your credit card, or you pay the credit card bill off if you love it. And if you really love it, you will tell others about it and tell them how great it is. You might want them to buy it as well. If you hate it, you probably will go online and do a bad review, and then that'll be quite important. So having understanding of this buying process for your customer will help you not only be a better engineer in designing products, but better entrepreneur in designing their business. So first thing first, I want to only focus on a couple of things here because this is a broad topic. We're not trying to train you as a salesperson, but beginning stage, you are the one need to sell this, not only to future employees, to investors and customers. So you have to have some competency in this. How do you create awareness? What I want to focus is users and economic buyers who pay for it and the champions. What you need to consider is who is your customer? Are you dealing with an enterprise? Are you dealing with individual? Is the person using your product the person who actually paying for it? And is the person paying for it also managing the budgets? This often happens in enterprise level of dealing. Budget is managed by one department, and the other department writes a check, and then the engineering floor manager often need to go ask for approval once surpass certain spending limits. So what's their spending limit is important too. And there's another concept called cost of customer acquisition. You can Google this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on how to do that calculation. Just do a Google search on cost of customer acquisition. It's a very easy calculation. And then you need to be able to think about the buying process. If you're in the consumer sector, which I know some of you are, think about when is the time they might recognize they need a tablet. When does that need recognition come up, right? It may be when I travel and realize I only have a desktop, or my laptop doesn't really quite do the job, it's too heavy. You want to catch them in that moment because that will make it easier. And that often lead into itself can be a type of business to help business creep on other consumer behavior. But you see, when they realize their needs is the moment the easiest to change their behavior. Right, entrepreneurship, that's really what's about. You need to be able to convince people to change their behavior to fit your offering in there, even though your offering might be a clear superior product and it will help you. Automation, same thing. We talked about this before. So really, this is a typical concept. So I call window of opportunity. You need to know what's the window of opportunity for you, right? In summer, a lemonade stand is really good. You can sell. You might want to get cold drinks because it's hot, and Christmas decoration probably won't sell a lot. But in winter, it's probably a queue. Now they need to buy Christmas decoration. So think about what's the window of opportunity for you, and when are the queues for other people to purchase. I think Nielsen said yesterday, when you do reach out to customers, if you mention you are student, they love it. But otherwise, they think that you might be a salesperson. So this is a issue. And then when you do actually go out there and trying to sell them something, how do you catch them on that? Nielsen, I'm actually going to pick on you a bit. You're in the enterprise level of selling. What's the window of opportunity typically in the industry as you have found out so far? Okay. If you're able, like maybe unmute yourself. Or otherwise, maybe let's come back to it. So, in any ways, what would be a good time for enterprise purchasing? Well, in my case, if it's automation, well, when they realize the cost of their labor will go up, it's an opportunity. When they realize how much the breakdown of their machine is costing them, causing delay in production line, that's a window of opportunity. But you may not be able to be there when that happens. So what are some opportunities? Well, trade shows in industry associations, you often go there, there are futuristic talks, and people are telling them, this is the next generation technology. Oh my word, I didn't know that's happening. They'll realize, okay, I need to think about some changes. Slip your card in there, especially if you're capital purchase, they may not be ready to make that buying decision there, but at least you create awareness when they do have some purchase, your name is in there. Consumer products, you have more ways to play. If you haven't heard about it, Google HubSpot, that's a company does a lot of inbound marketing. It's a game changer because traditionally you do a lot of outbound marketing. There's a sales cycle or drive your cash flow significantly. So think about what are some triggers in your industry for people to realize that need to buy. Aim that trigger, talk to them, then plant the seeds, and then start thinking about what's the sales process. Sometimes it may take years to actually close the deal, but so having actually a deep understanding will help you in many ways. So some things to consider, like are you inbound, like Amazon store, a website, you can drive the traffic to you when people Google something. Or are you traditional? You need to go after customers. You need to organize that differently. Are you going to use search engines, Facebook ads and Google ads? How do you play that game? How much it is to bid on different terms? There are a lot of different things. And then nowadays more popular, there's called influencer campaigns. How do you actually leverage content generator on YouTube to drive traffic to your product? Or maybe you want to be an influencer yourself and then own that content as well. So there are a lot of things to consider. This might be beyond some of your weight right now, but I want to create some awareness. And when you're ready, if you need more information, feel free to reach out. We're not going to take a break because Ali has already talked about it. I want to briefly talk about sales funnel. The reason why we push so hard on sales is also because just because you create awareness doesn't mean they buy. There are many stages you need to actually go through. It's very much like casual dating. You need to be able to actually become friends first, and then you start going out to do some fun things, and then you get to know each other well, and then you move on to maybe spending a little more time. So with your customer, it's the same process. So before they actually make commitment to write a letter of intent, starting to put down payments, like Ben or Neil said, a lot of things can happen. It can be all very positive. That's a conversation. Don't take it too seriously. Ask them how much they will pay. Ask them in form of letter of intent. After you have 2-3 meetings, follow the dating 3-day rule is fairly accurate as well. And the conversion rate, it really depends on the industry. Once you start doing it, you will have a better sense of it. But typically, it's much lower than what engineers consider because people may not actually fully understand the value of your product, which is actually partially why we need to teach you how to pitch your product quite a bit. Here's just a quick overview of some type of go-to-market strategy. You can either be a self-service sales, so basically, typically it's online, or you can do the inside sales and use more human touch, or you can automate that with online marketing. Channel sales that using intermediary goes to wholesale, a different level of distribution, or maybe field sales. This is more common in scientific equipment or larger equipment. You actually do the direct customer interaction, find out what they need. You might need to do some customization and do some demonstration before they actually decide. And think about like the self-service one. One of the ways you can do is use Kickstarter. Inside sales, nowadays Facebook marketing is actually quite popular. Channel sales, think about Federated Co-op is actually one of the greater advantage we have in Saskatchewan because their headquarters here and they have a close relationship with us. And Lyle has came in and talked about how they distribute certain products. If you are that type of business, we want to help you to actually get through that, and then you have at least Western Canada wide distribution right away. Field sales, you need to travel a lot, and then that's a whole different story. So really, the takeaway is to really think about who is your customer and who is paying for it and how they do it. And then Lee covered quite details in business modeling. I'm not going to go into a lot. Business model is really helpful, but typically what I warn people is if you're offering a free trial, that alone is not business model, right? Everyone wants something that's free, but they may happily switch once you ask them to pay even $10. So you need to find out who are the people who can actually help you pay your bills. So are they paying for it? How are they paying for it? If they're not, who is paying for it? Think about those and think about the products like you're using in your life, right? It's actually quite simple, really. I don't want to get a lot of fancy words. So here, let's try to get a little bit more simple. You have typically three types of ways to make money as a business. Traditional as a transactional way is the customer come in and pay, receive the products and leave. This is typically how engineering products are sold. Think about motorcycle, cars, laptop. That's how it's done. Nowadays, it's more popular subscription model. You know, Netflix is all about that, but it hasn't been new, really. The good book says there's nothing new under the sun. So think about the electricity bill you had to pay. Think about rent. That's all subscription model. It's just now it's being applied into more areas. The third type of model is ad-based model, and Google and Facebook are really good at that, but then they use quite a different platform strategy, so then they can cover that quite well. My suggestion is, as you're thinking about your products, think about if you can make it a recurring purchase. Why do you want to do that? Because finding a new customer is difficult. Once you already know a customer, help them to actually continue buying your product is easier. Anything can make into a subscription model, right? A lot of things you use constantly, and in many ways, especially if your customer have any type of brand loyalty, they'll constantly come back. For me, I like Crest toothpaste, and if I don't have it, I'll go out and buy them. Right, so think about that, like how easy that would be if I actually have them delivered to my door, because you kind of know the timing I need to use it. One of the business actually is doing that really well Amazon is trying to do that. Dollar Shaving Club, if you Google that, that's the company actually started doing that, trying to sell more blades. So basically, a couple of things I want you to take away is try to think about a simple way of selling and collecting money. If you make it simple, people can get it, they can trust it, and it's easier for you to manage. It's good. Ad alone is unsustainable. Right now, if you go to Facebook's financial statements, over 95% of their revenue are all commercial and advertisement based. I think in the next few years, we'll see Facebook going into a tougher time because it's an unsustainable business model with the data security and privacy issues. So you don't want to get into just that. Think about how to do that. And one-time sell is always really hard. So think about how you position yourself into a nice cash flow instead of a one-time purchase. And then now let's just quickly talk about, this is really financial 101. When you make a sale, not every single penny goes to you, right? Your sales need to cover some of the money you spend to develop the product, hiring people, and generate the sales. You need to pay tax, and you need to pay all your bills. After that, that's the money you keep. So when you do your budget, don't get too optimistic because how much you can sell. Think about the cost side as well. Will help you in a lot of ways. You can make a 5-year income statement, make some assumptions. It will be wrong, but it's a good process. And if you actually be realistic and try different scenarios, will help you. If you have taken the engineering economic class, this is where it's really useful. If you haven't, this information is freely available online. It's not hard. Basically, I want to skip a few slides here. Think about pricing is, my suggestion is don't do cost plus. This is typically the way we teach you in engineering school and you're probably more comfortable with. But if you do cost plus, oftentimes you're leaving money at the table because you're not actually fully assessing the value you're creating for the customer. So having a good understanding how they're using the products, how they actually determine your value will help you in those. Let's go through. Oh yeah, if you're in hardware business, cash planning is extremely crucial, especially nowadays. You've seen some of the disruptions. I was in that kind of circle for a while. It always takes much longer and much more money than you think to actually do your business. Typically, once you finish your budgeting, double the cost, you're more or less on par. And if you are doing software and hardware integration, the time you spend on integration probably will be twice as much as actually like you develop either of them. This is more rule of thumb. You might get lucky, but think about that when you budget your time and your cost. Because cash is really the blood of business. What's the number one job for CEO? It's not going out to get sales, is not going to get the media coverage, is to get the business door open to pay the bills. So you have to be able to do that well. And last thing I want to end here, that if you actually can make some money, what you want to do is to look at each customer and or as a group of customers for in terms of 5 years, can they create enough value that's at least 3 times more than how much you pay to get them? If you cannot get to that ratio, none of this matters because you will actually lose money and then it will become a mistake. So do those first. So I'm gonna end this here. We talk about decision units, buying process. How do you create some awareness and sales channel? Here's a bit of a shameless promotion. If you want to find out more, we do have more classes offered in this college that I also teach and then teach by other faculty members. This whole workshop is a snapshot of what I call the GE 431, the venture creation course that's offered in winter term. It's a project-based course. Instead of going through 1 week, you have a whole term work with me and developing your venture. So if any of you are interested, feel free to reach out to me and considering that. I do teach a couple of strategy course and product development course. We also have a speaker series. You have opportunity to see people who are in the entrepreneurial community and engineering community, build up your network. And IP strategy is quite important because that's how you actually can defend yourself, and then a general awareness would be interesting. So if you are interested in learning more, there are some opportunities as well. Let's talk about pitch tomorrow. So I want to do a quick poll. Please quickly respond to see how many of you are thinking about pitching and or not pitch. Okay, somehow send out 2 polls. I see there are a decent number of you are thinking about pitching, and a few of you are thinking maybe not. I will encourage you, if you do have an idea, and then if you want to go ahead and pitch, don't get intimidated by some of the content we present here, and because you are at the early stage, poking holes is what we do. And if you actually, the very least, you have a presentation opportunity, and you will receive feedback from professionals who actually help you rethink about your business, and they'll help you and have some feedback, will help you to move forward. Sometimes I know, especially as an engineer, we tend to be on the conservative side. We want to steer away from risk. But you want to take the risk so that you can go out there, present yourself, and receive well honest help. None of us are here to judge you in the shape of form. Actually, we are here to support you and get better at this early stage. Many of the people I know personally enjoy that exposure, and then it helps them to really think about what matters. And sometimes, even if they're not successful in the pitch competition, they may be successful in in their business. Sometime, if we have more time, I'll tell you more about one of my friends' business called Magical Pony, how that all worked out. But let's dive into the pitch a bit. So on Friday, you will have opportunity to pitch. Before that, I will play the devil's advocate. Tomorrow, we want to do a first round of preliminary pitching. The purpose of that is we want to, one, pick the top 7 teams to move on to the pitch night. And the second thing is we want to see how you're pitching and presenting. And if you need any support, I will be actually scheduling some time with you on Friday to help you get your pitch ready. In many ways, when you pitch, it's about storytelling. This is where your entrepreneurial reality distortion field come in. But you also want to not just rely on your personal charisma, but rely on the hard evidence and data. So basically, to give a great story presentation, you want to be able to tell a story, draw some same empathy from people, and then so then they can actually resonate with you, and it'll be really good if you actually refine and rehearse it or show. You want to seem very polished and professional. And in any ways, we're a bit different, so we will have a web-based presentation. What you want to do is still show professionalism. When you do present, turn your camera, be clear in your communication, present yourself in a decent appearance. If it's appropriate, you may want to use a virtual background so then it show up well. Or and think about duration. You have 10 minutes to present, and then there's a 3 minutes question period. You want to be quite clear in your problem statement and your proposed solution and why it's something that matters. So this would be the rubric you will be using. Because this is a startup workshop, we will not penalizing you for not having enough financial information. So that's a good news for some of you who are at very early stage. Really, you want to focus on a couple of things: content, delivery, and narrative. Content, you want to actually be able to present to your judges and make a connection with them. I have sent you who the judges are. Read their bios, Google them, and they're all on LinkedIn. You can figure out what they know and what they care about through their experience, their demographic, and use that to your advantage so that you present in a way they can understand. Engineers, we tend to focus on features. We want to tell people what this can do. Oh, like we have a wooden handle, it has a nice cloth, but the customers don't really care about it, right? Like for umbrella, they care if it covers rain from falling on their heads even in a rainy day, or keeps the sun away on a sunny day. So focus on the benefit on customer, not what you care about and what you did. And if you do, this is a cheat sheet I often give to my students when they pitch and present. Start with the title page, present your problem, present your solution, and then tell them like you already have a solution. Then just give a tiny bit of hint of the underlying magic, the type of technology you're using. Don't go too far, because not every single person is in that field, and they may not be able to understand the technological terms. Keep it magical. If they want to dive into it, they can. You want to leave some mystery in the presentation. talk about competition. Are there any? If not, how are they getting by? And if you have demonstration, do it. If not, that's fine. And do a call to action. You want to end your presentation with the ask in your pitching. So that may be asking for money, but it also means you're asking for mentorship. You're asking for advisors. So think about what stage you are and what you need to do. When you do pitch, focus on three things. Why does this matter? How is your solution better? And what it does. If you can communicate those three things, it will be very logical and clear. And if you do know how you can make money or how you think you can make money, present it that way, and you may have some good, helpful suggestions as well. Delivery, you are all really good professional and engineering students. I'm going to trust you can do that well. So just think about it, like show up confidently. Don't use your PowerPoint to show everything. Only show highlights, and talk in a way that's more engaging. And say it less, say it slower, so then people can actually understand you, especially we're in an online situation. Be concise. Spend some time on a visual. So then think as you are doing a whole performance. So, and then really in the end, if you have any personal experience that can help, use that. Last year we had a team, they worked on vulnerable notification system. Their opening statement was, one of the guys was enjoying Christmas Day, and he was on the vulnerable tracking duty. So typically in middle Saskatchewan winter, they go out every couple hours and check it. But because it's Christmas, he enjoyed the meal, he enjoyed the company, just missed one round. And when he went out, the vulnerable was broken. Spent the rest of Christmas Day de-icing the vulnerable and find out it was broken. It was miserable and it cost them a lot of money. So that was a clear story everyone can relate to in that situation, and think about how you can actually present your story that way. I'm gonna leave that with this, and is there any questions for me in regarding to the presentation and what happens next? Okay, seeing no questions, so I'm gonna move us towards the next session. This is we're getting close to the last session for the week. I will send out the preliminary pitch link to all of you. If you can email me and indicate you're pitching tomorrow, will be okay. The judge tomorrow will be myself, Rylan, our engineer, entrepreneur in residence, and Rick Carson, one of the alumni. We're here to help you get your presentation ready for Friday night. And now we should head into the investor session. I want to thank you for all your participation, and I will send out a quick survey just to get a few opinions and feedback on helping us improve this workshop and improve how we can support students like you and including yourself in the future. So if you can take a couple minutes and fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. The investor panel is in a different link. I'm gonna, just give me 1 second. I'm gonna send that to the Slack group and also the chat here. So let's take a break and I'll see you on the other side for the investors panel.